You have been late by 37 years. Sir, I can explain. But can't he? How do you explain getting late by 37 years? Or expecting to land in a different city only for you to land in a different country? Or maybe getting married today and celebrating your 37th year anniversary tomorrow? Or, here's a good one, flying to college and landing after 9 graduations. Well, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, passengers and cabin crew of the Pan American Flight 914 all mysteriously spent 3 hours in 37 years. Pan American Flight 914 was scheduled to fly from New York on the morning of July 2nd, 1955 and land in Miami, Florida, same day, 3 hours later. Takeoff was normal as usual, nothing weird, nothing funny, but 3 hours later, Florida did not see a trace of the airplane. No distress signals had been received by Miami, nor did the radars show any signs of an approaching aircraft. After contacting New York's tower, they were told that Flight 914 had simply vanished from the radars mid-air. Crazy? Aside from the aircraft vanishing into the blues, air traffic control could not get through to the pilot by any means. The plane had vanished. Abracadabra, no sign of itself or the personnel on board. Investigators concluded that it may have crashed into the Atlantic Ocean after following through the route it had taken. Rescue teams were deployed. The Coast Guards were scanning the waters, but no luck. Not a single piece of the vanished plane was to be found, not even remains of the personnel on it. 57 passengers and 4 cabin crew members had just disappeared. Finally, although the case was never really solved, an official statement was put out that the plane crashed, taking the lives of everyone on board and itself. Nobody could really tell what happened to the aircraft, not for almost 4 decades. On September 9, 1992, Juan de la Corte, air traffic controller at Caracas, Venezuela, is minding his business, sipping some coffee he had made, doing his air traffic controller job when he sees something strange. A new dot on his radar from nowhere. Now you don't see me, now you do. The bad boy with propellers had just popped out of nowhere, or as if it had been playing hide and seek and it was time to give up hiding. It now decided to show up. It was a strange thing to see a civil airport, and Juan de la Corte checked the reading several times, thinking at first that his coffee might have been spiked. It wasn't though. The readings were correct, and soon he and his colleagues were able to verify that this was not a mistake. After a short time, less than 10 minutes, the bad boy showed up in the field of vision. At first, it looked to the air traffic control like an ordinary plane, but as it got closer, they could see that it was the one and only, very old DC-4 McDonnell Douglas passenger aircraft that never landed, rather crashed 37 years ago, killing everyone on it and itself, still with propellers instead of modern turbines. Such planes were still in use, but they are grown outdated and replaced by more modern ones. That, however, was not the beginning of stranger things. The real strange began when the pilot of 914 contacted the tower and asked in English, "Where are we?" As the one in charge at the time, Juan Lacote replied they were closing in on the Caracas airport and asked where the flight was headed. There was a pause on the other side, and then the pilot answered, "We are Pan American Flight 914 heading from New York to Miami, Florida with a crew of 4 and 57 passengers on board." This took the air control in Caracas, Venezuela, completely off guard. Juan de la Corte was quick to ask few more questions to the pilot, and what he had next startled him. The pilot said his flight was scheduled to land at the Miami airport at 9:55 a.m. on July 2nd, 1955. Yep, my coffee has definitely been spiked. Before asking anything else, not to make matters worse, air control cleared the plane for landing. Juan Lacote didn't know what to understand or believe. Perhaps he thought it was the coffee. I know I would have. But that couldn't be possible since there were people on board the mystery plane. He had to make sure they landed safely and decided to ask questions after they did. Ground units were immediately called to assist the plane and the passengers, and it landed safely without trouble. Having relaxed a little bit, Juan Lacote decided to ask something that concerned him. Do you know today is May 21st, 1992? Perhaps he shouldn't have asked that considering the long silence he got. As the ground crew approached the airplane, the pilot's confused voice on the radio asked, "What are you talking about?" After hearing that, Juan de la Corte immediately knew he would have to order security guards to go to the plane and escort the passengers and the crew. However, as they were moving towards the aircraft, the pilot did something unexpected. Juan heard the panicked pilot's voice saying, "Jesus Christ, Jimmy, where are you? No, stay away. Now, let's go." The second pilot waved his arms out of the window in terror, inadvertently dropping something. The pilot restarted the engines and, without waiting for the takeoff, brought the airplane to the runway and took off despite Juan de la Corte trying to stop it. Nothing could describe the shock on Juan de la Corte and his colleagues at the air control tower. I mean, they'd just seen an old airplane appearing out of nowhere, the pilot telling them he was headed to Miami, and before they could do anything, it flew away again, only to disappear in thin air. No trace was found of that plane ever again, and to this day, no one can explain what happened that morning in Caracas. I must agree, the story is controversial. It may be tales we'll live to tell our children and grandchildren. First of all, because the incredible story that happened in Caracas was reported by a tabloid called Weekly World News, an infamous tabloid known for publishing fantastically fictitious stories, such as this bit about a time traveler getting busted for insider trading, this story about a man suing himself after hitting himself with a boomerang. In other words, Weekly World News isn't exactly a reputable source of news. The newspaper had already known the story of the Pan American Flight 914 plane that disappeared in 1985, 7 years before the alleged appearance. Moreover, the same tabloid published two other versions, changing facts like the photo of Juan de la Corte and adding some details. Searches have been done through newspaper archives for any contemporary articles relating to the disappearance of a plane, and unsurprisingly, nothing has showed any credible news accounts about the disappearance of Pan American Flight 914. The story has thus become an urban legend that no one denies or confirms, and has as its only real proof of a small calendar of 1955 that would have fallen from a plane when it landed and then left again. But what happened to the passengers? There is too little evidence to confirm what appears to have happened 37 years later. Basically, the rest of the story is a tale of fantasy, or time traveling is real. That would explain the famous show Manifest, but we will never know. What do you think? Perhaps we wait for it to show again in 2029?